The bridges that connect New York fade in the distance as you go up the river. An expression made famous from this journey taken by convicts since the early 1800s. 30 miles north of New York City, straight up the Hudson, a fortress reveals itself. Sing Sing. This correctional facility is one of the oldest in the nation and still serves New York. For 50 years, it was home to Old Sparky, the electric chair in which 614 men and women were executed, including Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, the married couple accused of passing atomic secrets to the Soviets in 1951. The serial killer, Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, was locked up here, and the facility continues to house nearly 2,000 men whose violent acts challenge our notions of humanity. I've come to Sing Sing to discover whether redemption is possible for an inmate who killed savagely and without mercy. Inside Evil is the name of the series. Does this qualify as an evil act?
In 2001, he was the embodiment of evil. I can't tell you what he's like now.
Meet Sing Sing inmate number 04A0823, John Joseph Lennon. No connection to the musical icon, just a name loaded with talent and tragedy.
And I came to prison, somebody that was frankly a disgusting person. I've been able to discover what empathy is, what remorse is.
And yet Lennon is a murderer. He executed a man in cold blood, Alex Lawson, whose family Lennon knew.
This is Alex's death certificate. Alex was shot about 18 times with an M16.
Taisha Lawson is Alex's sister.
He blew parts of his body off and continued letting rounds go. You didn't have to shoot him 18 times to kill him. 18 times. That's a cruel, cold person. John Lennon is a killer. He's a killer.
Almost 20 years later, the loss still causes anguish.
He was a very important person in my life.
Former Assistant District Attorney Stephen Murphy remembers the death of Alex Lawson as a particularly brutal murder. You prosecuted the case.
I handled a lot of murder cases. The names and the memories fade. This one resonates with me to this day.
Why?
I saw him as a complete waste of talent. He had a decent upbringing. He was someone who had an opportunity to advance his life, but he was captivated, very obviously captivated, by the lure of the street. He wanted to be a thug.
John Lennon doesn't disagree. He wanted respect as a gangster on the streets of New York.
Don't move! Take it easy!
Growing up with a single mom in the Brooklyn housing projects, he was fascinated by the movie Goodfellas. Ruthless young gangsters killing to make their way up the ranks of a criminal organization.
He kept watching that Goodfellas over and over, like a fantasy world.
His Aunt Marianne and his mother Laura remember the movie as an obsession.
I thought he was studying it. That was his hero up there. He wanted to be somebody in there. And he didn't stop watching it.
I romanticized it, and that's how I sort of aspired to murder almost, for those, as chilling as it is to say.
Taisha had no illusions about Lennon when her brother brought him home.
The first time I met John, it was just something that didn't sit right with me. He just looked like sneaky, cold. Like there was definitely a dark side, another side to him.
By the time they were in their mid-20s, both Lennon and Lawson were dealing drugs in Brooklyn.
Alex was a hustler, and he was a smooth cat. I admired him, and he had swagger, and he was just a guy that was smart, that he would not sell crack in the project where guys were killing each other.
They were friendly rivals until just before Christmas 2001.
I can't tell you exactly why he killed Alex Lawson. I think that he was thirsty, starving for the attention on the street that it would bring him.
The story, according to Lennon, is that he was trying to find out who was stealing from him.
There was a couple guys that delivered packages of heroin and cocaine. This Russian dude, he made a lot of money for me. He started coming up short. He never came up short. He said, look, you know, every time this guy calls me, he's shaking me down. He'll take whatever bundles I have. And I was like, how long has this been going on? And he said, you know, if I tell you, then I'm dead.
Lennon says he was told the guy doing the extorting was Alex Lawson, so he took matters into his own hands.
Now's the time.
Lennon asked Lawson to come for a ride and reassured him with a lie.
I said, look, I don't have a gun on me. And he said, I don't have a gun on me either. And I said, let's talk.
Lennon asked a mutual friend, a young woman named Christy Hernandez, to join them.
What were you hoping would come from the discussion? Or was it just a setup?
It was more of a setup, I would say. It was a gradual convincing of myself. It's not like you don't grapple with it. It's like, all right, am I gonna do this? Is it now?
And in just a matter of moments,
Went to a deserted part of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I got out of the car. Music was on, so I hit the trunk and I took the gun out of the trunk. I came around and I shot Alex.
Lawson, distracted by his phone, never saw the barrage of bullets coming.
Put the gun right beside me, just took off.
Do you remember how you felt after it was done?
Yeah, it's a lot of adrenaline exploding. It's surreal.
His horrified friend, Christy, was screaming. After Lennon ran a red light, she jumped out of the car. Lennon remembers being stunned by the power of his weapon.
I see as I take him outside the passenger door, the bullets went right through him and through the door. These are like 223 bullets, and I was like, wow. I put him in the trunk, and I got on the highway, and I had to get this car off the street.
Lennon went, of all places, to his mother's house, where he kept another car.
I knew right away. I knew he was just not right. He was agitated, mean, nasty to me.
Laura's son was now a killer.
I says, in my driveway you have a body? You get that body out of there. He took the car and he left. And he drove around with his body.
When we come back, Lennon gets caught because of what he calls a mistake in how he disposed of the body.
According to, real gangsters, you're not even doing it right.
John Lennon has crossed the line from watching violent Hollywood gangsters to becoming a real killer. His victim, Alex Lawson, is dead in his trunk.
Now with Alex, the next day with a guy that sort of held my drugs in that neighborhood, we put him in a bag and weigh him down. And now we put him in the ocean, like a half-assed sort of like organized crime sort of thing.
Did word spread that he was gone and you had done it?
Yes.
Did you like that in a way?
At the time, you thrive off that. That is the image now, as sick as it sounds.
Now, you're in the drug game, people will know that you'll kill to handle your business.
Right, now I'm all in. There's no time for reflecting on regret and remorse. There was also a lot of drugs. I remember being just so paranoid on cocaine and ups and downs with heroin and thinking that he was coming out of the water and he was gonna get me.
There are images former prosecutor Stephen Murphy can't get out of his head about how Lennon killed Alex Lawson.
He packs a gun that you could kill an army of people with, and he gets out and shoots this man at close range. He then takes the body. You've got to really think about the imagery here. He's driving with a person who he considered a friend. who he shot more than 20 times at close range, his body riddled with bullets.
Lawson's family has no idea of the horror.
My mother and I went Christmas shopping, and we both bought him something from the mall.
Worry begins to edge into their Christmas cheer.
The next day, John calls my mother's house looking for Alex. Can I speak to Alex?
When you have someone who commits about as brutal a murder as you can imagine, and then decides to try and make myself look like I wasn't involved, I'm gonna call his mother. It's right around Christmas time. I'm gonna reassure her.
Pretty dark-hearted.
While the case is being investigated, he's selling guns, he's selling drugs. There's very clear evidence that he was beating his girlfriend to a point where she wasn't able to walk and then bragging about it afterwards. And all of this was caught on tape.
Maybe I think of you, 'cause you're sorry for giving you beatings.
It gives you a sense of who he was at that time.
Does your sense of self change when you go from somebody who's like a lot of other tough guys who talk shit about taking somebody else's life, but now you've actually done it?
Yes, that happens.
And what is that about?
That is about the whole reputation. That is about fulfilling the image.
Eventually, that ego for gangster credibility would take Lennon down.
There were a lot of people who would talk on the streets. John shot Alex. And that was largely because he couldn't keep that to himself.
But despite it being an open secret on the streets, without evidence, it was a cold case for 3 months, and Lennon continued with his life, dealing drugs, business as usual.
Were you able to process it with regret at the time?
No, there wasn't regret yet. Regret comes when there's a possibility of getting caught.
And then, the water gave up its secret.
This is the police department, sir. You need the police there?
Yes, I do.
What happened?
I was walking along the beach and I found what appears to be a body.
A body? That's what you say?
On a bleak February morning on Plum Beach in the Rockaway section of Brooklyn, Alex Lawson's body rose from the depths.
The body had garbage bags wrapped around it, and you can see the skin dripping off of his bones, how his eyeballs had been eaten by creatures in the sea, and how you thought to yourself, this is someone's son.
John Lennon was locked up in Rikers Island on unrelated drug charges when he read an article in the Daily News.
It mentioned on February 11th, 2002, a laundry bag with a body in it had washed ashore on Plum Beach. You know, I'll never forget it, of course. And that's when, you know, it all hits you. It was like, oh shit, now there's gonna be an investigation.
What we learned through the investigation and throughout the trial process is that he was a person who was willing to intimidate witnesses, charm witnesses, threaten people, and he was going to extract any means that he could to try and get away from being held responsible for this.
When the trial started in New York, Taisha Lawson brought her newborn daughter and her mother to the Brooklyn courtroom every day.
The person that murdered my brother is sitting literally like inches away from me, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me.
They showed Alex's body to the jury and the district attorney. They know what they're doing. I remember like hearing this wail in the audience, and it was his mother. And that was the, you know, that was the first time I felt remorse. And I'm trying to get away with murder at the same time.
When we come back, Lennon is dead set on beating the system.
You know, that's the conflict of I wasn't able to sort of really deal with the remorse because I was looking to get acquitted.
I promised myself that justice was going to be served, and I will be here every day to represent my brother. My brother had people that loved him, a family, And I wanted everyone in that court to know that.
It took 2 trials to bring justice for Alex Lawson's family. The first one ended in a mistrial. Lennon was found guilty after a second trial in 2004.
He characterizes Lawson as a guy who was in the drug game, who was known as dangerous, and who he was now in a kill or be killed situation. Your take?
Revisionist history. It came off as one person ambushing another. I mean, this is a guy who rented a car specifically because he was planning to kill his friend. It shows a certain sense of premeditation. He packs a gun with him, a gun that you could kill an army of people with.
He was sentenced to a total of 28 years to life behind bars.
The justice system worked in my case.
Putting you away was the right thing to do.
Putting me away was absolutely the right thing to do.
And yet years passed before Lennon truly felt this way. In prison, friends of Alex were looking to avenge his murder.
I'm hit up, lung punctured, because when it happens, it's slick, it's fast. It was what's up, you know, beam, right under the arm 6 times. And I embraced the dude. We know each other. He's from the projects. I grew up with him too.
He was doing it because he knew Alex?
Yes.
So it was like payback?
Yes. Well, that was the first form of payback. Another friend of Alex gave me a good old-fashioned beating, and a part of me respects it. Like, it's like, you know what, I deserve that.
Lennon's mother was his main support, visiting him as often as she could.
You know, he had nobody.
She was tough on her son.
I said, so you ruined your life just now. You cannot reverse this. And he said, I'm having a life. I don't care what you say, I'm making a life for myself.
Even in prison, old habits die hard.
I've smuggled drugs. I've done drugs.
With time, by your own reckoning, you've moved away from that. Why?
I mean, I got sober. I got sober in a 12-step meeting. I did some work on myself, looking at fears, looking at resentments, looking at my ego. Like, what's that about?
It's the question I've had on my mind. How does the young boy in these idyllic childhood images grow up to become a killer? The one person not shown in any of these photos is John Lennon's father, a man he never met.
What were you told about your father?
They blew his head off, and he was an alcoholic.
What do you think that meant to you as a child, hearing about how your father's life had ended?
Like, what about me? Like, you know what I mean?
He couldn't handle it. His whole life unraveled, became wild.
When his mother remarried, they moved into her new husband's apartment in Hell's Kitchen, a gritty working-class neighborhood on the far west side of Manhattan. John found himself longing to be accepted by his new streetwise peers.
The police have known of the Westies since immigrant days.
Irish-American gangsters known as the Westies controlled Hell's Kitchen for decades and were used as enforcers by the Gambino crime family.
The accused Westies acted as contract killers.
They dismembered the bodies of the people they killed. They've been known to take the head of a victim into a bar and show them to people.
The sons of these murderers became Lennon's new friends.
My God, I was just I wanted to be accepted. I had this void. I just wanted to be down with these kids. Like, my friend's father was murdered, and, he was a Westie.
Teenage boys living with the reputations of fathers so lethal, they'd become legendary.
I remember my stepfather telling my mom about how Jackie Coonan used to go into a bar and blow somebody's head off. And nobody said nothing. And they all respected him or feared him. I heard respect. I didn't hear them talking about my father, who had just blown his head off. He was irrelevant.
Respect was a currency as important as money in Hell's Kitchen.
Code of the street is you never tell on your friends. You never hurt your friends. Respect was a big one, a very big one.
Kenny Gonzalez became one of John Lennon's friends.
We were selling drugs on the corner. We were robbing. We were doing burglaries. We were crooks. We didn't respect the law. We didn't like cops. Our influences were gangsters. John Gotti was like we read about him in the paper every day.
Gonzalez was an early guide to Lennon, who was excited to learn about his world of drugs and guns.
And it was funny watching him. It was like watching a baby horse learn how to walk. But he eventually did, and started to hustle. He started to make money. He started to know the game. And in fact, he started to get arrested, and we all did, and wind up, you know, in the system and on Rikers Island and in the Tombs.
Rikers and the Tombs, New York City's notorious jails. But they didn't spend much time locked up. And soon, Lennon moved back to Brooklyn and created a heroin business.
I would say he was doing tens of thousands of dollars a week. He came back to my neighborhood, and he was in like the baddest, hottest car of the time. He had like this Cadillac STS North Star. He had big diamonds and jewels.
Well, he was crazy with selling drugs. I said, you're a fool to do that.
John was very good at selling heroin. I would go out to Brooklyn with him. He was showing me this whole new world that I knew nothing about.
I was selling a lot of drugs, but also doing a lot of drugs.
John and I, selling heroin, created people that were on heroin and desperate people. It's a ripple effect. You played a major part in the destruction of your environment and lives.
So when you go back to the time of the crime, where were you in life?
There was a lot of violence happening.
Lennon says it was one scary incident after another.
Another drug deal gone bad. I had a bag of money. Money was in the air. I pulled out a gun. They jumped out. There was gunshots.
One night in 2001, the violence even followed him home. Lennon says he returned to his apartment and quickly realized he wasn't alone.
I actually walked into the home invasion, and it was like a wild scene. And I kind of like jumped out of the apartment, and these guys were right on my heels. They were waiting for me because they knew I would have a nice watch and some jewelry on. These were serious cats. They weren't drug dealers. They kidnapped drug dealers. This is what they do. These are the people that introduced me to the heroin game. I got away, but they were right on my heels. This is this lifestyle. So they were getting at me. A lot of people were getting at me.
You were a magnet for bad people.
It was a sick scene.
But what he did next speaks volumes about John J. Lennon's take no prisoners mentality.
I remember I shot up their car a couple days after that, and I heard sirens. The gun that I had to dump it.
That meant that Lennon needed a new weapon.
A friend of mine had told me that, you know, there's a couple guns that came up from down south.
He was offered an M16 assault rifle.
I didn't want a gun like that, but he was like, this is what I have. And I said, well, okay.
That gun and that decision changed the lives of Alex Lawson's family and his own forever. When we come back, John Lennon replaces the gun with something more powerful, his mind.
You and I work with the same editor. You and I do the same job. Literally, with the same person, with the same outlet.
Right.
In two totally different universes. How do you reconcile them?
I don't reconcile, I just do it. You know, you come to prison, I don't know who the hell I was, you know? I was trying to be something I wasn't, clearly. And then you're in prison for 20 years to life. You're like, what the hell did I do here? And this is disgusting. And then, you know, you go through some tribulations, and I found something that I was really passionate about.
John Lennon discovered his passion in a creative writing course to write about the deplorable stories of poverty, illiteracy, and mental illness that he saw all around him in inmates.
And it's getting the story, and it's grabbing these characters, and it's bringing them to life. You're immersed in whatever character is, you know, of the moment, and it's all about that. It's all about the story.
When I arrived at this notorious prison to meet Lennon, I was reminded of the mind hunters who have sought answers from murderers since the Silence of the Lambs that turned a young FBI agent going head-to-head with a serial killer into a household name.
Good evening, Clarice. Pity about poor Catherine, though. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock.
But behind these maximum security gates is a twist that Hollywood hasn't imagined. And yet, it's playing out in some of the most esteemed literary publications. Lennon, who's committed murder himself, actively goes inside the minds of other killers to tell their stories.
Your approach is I have a lot in common with these guys that I'm talking about. You don't, Cuomo. You think you know them, you don't know them. I know them because I am one of them.
When I talk to guys and they tell me about murder, I am listening to the story. What happened next? I am non-judgmental to the core. And through storytelling and through journalism, I've been able to find myself. I've been able to discover what empathy is, what remorse is. And I've been able to see it in my subjects. So these are my digs here.
Lennon is now a prison journalist. We've been given rare access at Sing Sing today, visiting his cell, which is turned into an unlikely writer's room.
Most days, it's kind of just like this, you know? This is how I roll.
From behind bars, Lennon has written for some of the most prestigious and popular magazines and newspapers in the world, including one I've worked with, Men's Health.
You want to hear how I landed Men's Health?
Please. Lennon shares an excerpt of his writing.
Any shred of sanity he has is worked out in the weight pit of the yard. He drags his crew, Albanian Val, Mustache Anthony, Zach, through a grueling routine every morning.
He's published The Murderer's Mother, a look at his own murder conviction from his mother's point of view.
You know, the kid last night with a scar running down his face like this says, you know, good job. I read that.
And he's written opinion pieces about subjects he's become passionate about. A convicted murderer's case for gun control. And let prisoners take college courses. The former executive editor of the New York Times, Bill Keller, has high praise for this prison journalist's work.
He was the first one that I actually found myself thinking of as a colleague. When he's writing for me, he's not a killer. He's a journalist.
Like, I built a career for myself in prison. You know, I think if I was out, I'd be pretty employable, you know, but I'm a convicted murderer.
You try not to define people by the worst thing they ever did.
Lennon co-authored A Turbulent Mind with Bill Keller, who's now editor-in-chief of the Marshall Project, a news organization focused on the U.S. criminal justice system.
John called me up and said, guess who's in Sing Sing? Andrew Goldstein is here. I've been talking to him. He's in the seriously mentally ill ward, but I've got access to him, and he's available to be interviewed.
Andrew Goldstein, battling schizophrenia and off his meds, made headlines in 1999 when he hurled an aspiring journalist named Kendra Webdale onto the subway tracks in front of an oncoming train in New York City. She was killed instantly.
Any reservations about sharing a byline with somebody on the inside?
On top of it being the only way that the story could be told, it had a certain novelty value. I think that helped get it some attention.
That's the grit of why there's an audience for it. I take on Andrew Goldstein's character. You got a guy that was tormented now in prison. He's getting bullied, schizophrenic man. This is what it looks like.
Inside his cell, Lennon does his reporting on a prison-approved, transparent typewriter.
10 of every 11 psychiatric patients housed by the government are incarcerated. Here's what the crisis looks like from the inside. A series of lost lives, a few rare victories as reported by prison journalists. I mean, this is an important story. This is more about, you know, sort of me popping my collar, you know, in Esquire. This is real issues.
Sure.
And it's me weaving myself through the story, too.
An insider who can describe what he sees to the outside world.
Has Lennon made a positive impact on issues that matter for others as a journalist?
Yes, I think he has. The Marshall Project did a piece about a particularly brutal case of guards hammering an inmate within an inch of his life. And subsequently, Attica did a bunch of things, including installing 2,000 cameras in places that used to be where the guards would take an inmate for a little informal roughing up. We were curious to know whether that had made any difference. This was when he was still in, John was still in Attica. He started asking people. The answer was having those cameras in made an appreciable difference in the level of violence at Attica. Having fewer of these dark spots makes a difference. That's a positive good.
Journalism has helped me sort of self-discover on many levels when we talk about empathy.
Lennon's passion for writing also led to finding romance.
She saw things in you.
She saw things in me. She did, yes.
How a pen pal became his wife when we return. Raina was a sun-kissed California girl enjoying a career in television production. She also nurtured a passion for criminal justice issues.
I did have an interest in people that had gone back into drugs or alcohol and committed a crime, and now were incarcerated.
On a whim, she decided to explore her curiosity online.
It was through like pen pal writing and a website that, honest to God, was prisonpenpals.com. I'm fully aware of how cheesy that sounds.
She couldn't get the profile of inmate 04A0823, John Lennon, out of her mind.
In his ad, he had the word sober in there, and to most people, I feel like with any 12-step exposure, that means this big transformation.
She was probably the kindest person I had ever met. Just decency and just sweet. And she was a cool girl.
He'd done this kind of, ultimate bad thing, and he still had his family in his life. That meant something to me, too.
So she flew across the country to meet Lennon in maximum security prison.
She was smart and she was well-read.
I enjoyed our conversations, and I liked him, and I knew that he liked me. And you have to be married to even be alone, so we'll get married.
Raina celebrated the surprising nuptials in a traditional way. She and her husband spent their alone time in trailers for families.
To me, it felt like a cabin in Tahoe or something. I didn't sit and think, ooh, I'm in maximum security prison.
Raina tried to help Lennon get his articles on inmate issues accepted by national papers.
Social justice issues are really something like close to my heart. So I loved making those phone calls and being like a liaison.
She encouraged the journalism?
She encouraged the writing. It was a healthy, relationship until it got unhealthy.
Why?
I was writing another girl, and I was a jerk. And we got a divorce, and I felt bad about that. I broke her heart.
After we split, it was rough and ugly.
And it was at this volatile time that the New York Times reached out wanting to print one of Lennon's articles.
That's a huge deal, and most people don't get an email that says, we want to publish you in the New York Times, but he was going to have me to help him do that.
Lennon has now been published more than 20 times in different newspapers and magazines. In various articles, he writes about his victim Alex Lawson as a fellow gun-toting thug, immersed in gangster culture, and a drug dealer. Descriptions that don't sit well with Lawson's family, especially since many readers know Alex Lawson only from how his killer, John Lennon, portrays him. Lennon calls his work immersive journalism.
I always weave my own story through the reportage.
Lawson's godson, Ronnie Neal, revisits the neighborhood where Alex played football.
This is Kings Bay. This is where I first seen Alex play the real game with the equipment. As always, man, he was the smallest one on the field, the one making the biggest plays.
He wishes Alex could be remembered as the vibrant young athlete he once was, his family cheering him on.
He excelled. I get that vivid feeling that I still can hear, his mom and his dad yelling his name, Alex, Alex. Taisha, everybody going crazy when he runs for a touchdown.
Taisha is stunned that Lennon is even allowed to write about killing her brother.
It angered me because I feel like he's becoming a celebrity. He actually says that he's making money off of this. He's getting paid for these articles.
We asked Lennon about the money, He responded that his fees are the same as any journalist on the outside doing the same work.
It's really upsetting to know that the system even allows this.
Taisha Lawson's husband, Saeed Pate.
I think he continues to victimize Alex even in his death.
A New York law known as the Son of Sam law aims to prevent convicts from profiting from their crimes by notifying their victims anytime an inmate has more than $10,000 in their account, an amount that presumably has not been reached by Lennon. As Alex Lawson's family says, they've yet to be contacted about money. They are also disappointed with Lennon's publishers.
No one has ever called, tried to contact me to see how true this story is. Never happened.
Nor has she ever heard a word from Lennon.
John has never reached out to my family to ask for any forgiveness. He's never tried to call, never.
John Lennon's response when we come back.
This picture here is the one I kept with me at all times. But this is like proof. This was my first college apartment. And I always kept a picture of him everywhere I live at my mirror. So I can always look at him every day.
Alex Lawson is never far from Ronnie Neal's mind.
I know it's not easy for you. I do. I know it's not easy for you.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
The heartache from Alex's murder still deeply felt.
How are we doing?
I apologize, you guys.
No, what are you apologizing for?
20 years, man. I thought this thing was gone.
Let's do this. Let's look at the good times.
That's me. That's his mom, Jeanette. That's his sister, Taisha.
This is at confirmation?
At confirmation. I even took his name.
Alex's advice to him growing up to never cut a class is a testament to Ronnie's choice of career.
So what are you doing with life now?
I cultivate and solicit funds for scholarships at Virginia State University.
Good for you.
Saeed and Taisha don't believe in Lennon's transformation.
He's painting a narrative of redemption. He wants it to look like he's this reformed person. People want to hear about that, someone who did better. But there's no remorse involved. There's more strategy than anything.
I've basically read all of his, well, everything that I could find. I've read a lot. And there's a lot of untruth.
Do you think you can do anything to prove otherwise to somebody who is Alex's loved one?
I would hope that some of the things that I do that are good, that are considered good, will be in his name. I could say, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry for you know, killing Alex, and mean it. He is part of me too. You know, he's part of my story, and I'm living with him for the rest of my life.
What have you learned about the difference between who somebody is and what they've done?
When I killed Alex, that took 3 seconds. I mean, it was a horrible scene. But I'm able to sort of detach and feel that years later more, because that's not what I do every day today. It's kind of cliche. I'm not a fan of cliche being a writer, but you know, you're not your worst deed.
What do you do with the feelings about your journalism? Your narratives are part of an overall fake narrative that you're trying to portray yourself in a way to get out of here. What do you do with that?
I say not so fast. This is what I do, and I enjoy it. It gives my life purpose, and I will be doing this when I get out. You better believe that.
Lennon will be eligible for parole starting in 2030. And since our interview, he says he's been thinking about reaching out to Taisha Lawson, if she's willing to meet with him. In an email, Lennon writes, "It's true that I've not reached out to the Lawsons to apologize directly and asked for forgiveness. Forgiveness, I've read, can be transformative, especially for the victims. Yet I'm not sure how to go about asking for forgiveness. I'm writing a letter to the Lawson family. If they'd like to meet, I'm also willing to do that. But I think this should be a private exchange. Thinking about that has also made me realize that I need to start representing Alex better in my writings going forward. John Lennon's mother, Laura, feels her son has profoundly turned his life around in prison.
I'm very proud of him. Very, really proud of him. I knew he had it in him. I said, I tried to get it out of him, but he was so dead on, set on it. Yeah. But that's how he gets. So now he changed the gun in for a pen.
She loves you, but you've said that about your mom. She was hip, and she knew what was going on, but she could only control so much.
Right.
So what's happened with the relationship over the years?
She sort of closed shop when I went away. That's the mother to that murderer. And I feel terrible about that. And in addition, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So she packed up and she moved to Florida. I started getting published. And now she's proud. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Even though she doesn't think she'll ever feel well enough to travel to see her son in prison again, Laura feels something important now: peace of mind.
He writes and he has a vocabulary that's beautiful. I don't know where he learned all these words. And I said, I don't speak like that. You're a gentleman today. You're where I wanted you to be.